Welcome to the place where we learn about and learn from the leaders in our field who are powering human creativity. I am Aaron Dworkin, and this is Arts Engines. Thanks again for joining me here on Arts Engines. Today's guest is Alex Laing, who serves as the principal clarinet of the Phoenix Symphony. I would be very remiss if I did not share that he is the 2018 recipient of the Sphinx Medal of Excellence, and he is the incoming executive director of the Gateways Music Festival. Alex, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me here. It's a real pleasure.
Oh, well, so I am so excited to have you on the show. First and foremost, I have had the benefit and honor to be able to see your artistry for so many years, upfront and personal, and be able to see you both performing in Sphinx capacities and others. And not only that, but also the leadership impact you have already had on the field. It really is extraordinary. So I am honored and excited to have you on the show.
Oh, that's really kind, Aaron. And of course, back at you tenfold, of course.
Oh yeah, no, thank you, thank you. And so this is kind of huge. This is a big succession evolution that is taking place at Gateways. One of our storied institutions in the field has had so much impact over so many decades. And so I thought first it might be good if you could just share with our audience kind of what is the breadth of the work of Gateways?
Sure. Well, Gateways Music Festival was founded in 1993 in Winston-Salem by Arminta Hummings Dumasani, an amazing pianist, artist, visionary, trailblazer, pioneer, whose work we're both sort of traveling in the wake of, as you well know.
Absolutely, completely.
Yeah.
The honor, she honored me by coming to the inaugural Sphinx, and I was so moved and inspired by her. She is just an extraordinary leader.
No, and so Gateways was founded, and the mission of Gateways is to connect and support professional classical musicians of African descent and enlighten and inspire communities through the power of performance. And so Gateways has been operating continuously since 1993. The flagship event of Gateways is the in-person festival. That's how it started, gathering, Arminta tapping her network to gather together Black classical musicians to celebrate, to support each other, to create community for her sort of budding, prodigal, or rather prodigious children who are also amazing musicians in their own right. Amadi, of course, comes to mind. And so that was the origin story, and it has continued through then. When she went to the Eastman School of Music, the festival traveled with her and became founded or sort of based in Rochester, New York, where it lived for many, many years. And then was passed on to Lee Kuntz, who is the amazing transformative leader of the organization, who took this project that Arminta had lovingly sort of, built into this vibrant festival and continued in building it. And so now Gateways has actually had its debut at Carnegie Hall last year. First time the festival was actually in two cities. So it was between Rochester, New York and New York City, and continues to really be a home and a much needed home for Black classical artists.
Yeah, so this work, of course, is so extraordinarily important, and the impact of Gateways obviously is huge, and this past year even expanded, and such a major success at Carnegie Hall. And as you're kind of coming in and taking the reins, many of our audience are in various leadership roles themselves. Some of them are taking over in succession at existing institutions. And just wondering if you could kind of share, so as you kind of take the reins of this storied institution, how do you have kind of a vision of how you see things moving forward? Do you have a sense of the impact you'd like to see in the next chapter that you'll lead the organization. Kind of wondering how you are looking at that kind of visioning for the organization.
Sure. I mean, I think it's important to sort of name my privilege in this regard. And the privilege that I have is that I'm really stepping into an organization that has thoughtfully crafted a succession plan. And so for myself as the person stepping into this role, I'm really grateful and recognize that the way that it's happening is perhaps a little unique in our business and one of the benefits of joining a mature organization. So in my case, I'll be joining the organization as executive director. Lee will stay on as president and artistic director for a period of time. I'll get to overlap and work with him. And then before it's sort of fully on my plate. And so I'm really grateful for that. So all that to say, that really gives me the opportunity to focus on learning and listening in this period. And I know everyone recognizes that that's such a valuable thing that we often just don't have time in our lives for. So the organization has really afforded me a tremendous opportunity. And it's I think so unique in that regard, but that'll be sort of my chief focus, right? Is learning and listening. Beyond that, I think that, the major work of Gateways is building community. That's what we are about. That's what we've been about. And there are a lot of people who want to join this community as performing artists, first and foremost, but as audience members, as partners. And so, supporting the organization so that we can, thoughtfully and mindfully and joyfully, step into this opportunity. That's also going to be, some of the work that's ahead of me, and I'm really, of course, grateful. It's an incredible opportunity, and I can't wait to just be waking up every day in service to this community. It's really a life's dream.
Oh, no, it is so awesome. And of course, Lee, also one of our great arts leaders for so many
Yeah.
years. And I've learned so much from him as well. And it's wonderful we had him on the show. Is as you kind of think about this work, and I'm curious that there are those in our audience who are trying to work on diversity in their own institutions or thinking about this. This is obviously an issue very, very close to your heart and experiences and a lot of work that you've done. As you look at the field now, how do you feel we're doing? Are you optimistic? Kind of what's your, if you will, brief assessment of where we're at and the role of and necessity of organizations like Gateways?
Yeah, well, let me say at the top, Gateways, mindfully and intentionally identifies itself as not being a diversity initiative, right? In the same way that, for instance, an HBCU might say, well, we're not a diversity initiative, right? We have a unique sort of history and place in this, which is not to say that we don't care deeply about this and that we don't want to see, I think you could understand that we have even a lot of incentive to want the artists that we associate ourselves with and are associated with us to have every opportunity out in the field. But to answer, having said that and turning to your question, yeah, I mean, I'm generally an optimistic person, right? That's my vibe. So let me say that I'm optimistic. Let me say that I've been really interested lately in speculative fiction, particularly anti-dystopian speculative fiction, which identifies itself as not utopian, but anti-dystopian. And so I would say, as it relates to our field in that regard, that might be another way of sort of locating me, right? That I'm not utopian about this, but I'm anti-dystopian and think we need to really harness our imaginative capacities and in order to get there, we have to be able to first imagine it. The last thing I will say is that I think that what we need, though, the superpower in this field is right there in the title of your show. It's the arts, right? That's the superpower of what drove you to do everything you've done, right? It really starts with a person and a sound or a look or something, right? So I think what we have to really, and I think what has fueled my career is that this, what we might call diversity, equity, inclusion, or stuff that I say that might be located in that lane. For me, this wasn't something I added on to my artistic practice. It has been there from the beginning as an irritant, right? In some regards, as a fertilizer, as a fuel. And so for me, I really believe in myself. It feels in my body. I make better music when I'm in the company of Black people, be it on stage or in the audience. I think it makes me a better artist, a better performer, a better communicator. And that has driven me, of course. For me, the idea of being in relation and in community with Black people and Black audiences and Black culture is also being driven by the same thing that makes me obsessively practice Capriccio Espanol to like my eyeballs and fingers and everything else is bleeding, right? That same like, gotta get it, want it, have to have it. So I think the more that we can start to loop these things back into our artistic zeal, and as organizations ask ourselves like, how is your art and art making and artists poorer for the lack of diversity in your organization and your audience? How is the thing suffering, right? And I think, because that's, I mean, you're a violinist, third movement of Barber violin concerto, considered unplayable, right, when it first came out. Humans will sort of grow to the task, especially if they're driven by something, that taps into that thing that makes us art, the verb, And so I think seeing it, we need both. We need the technical, the tactical, the quantifiable, and we also need this sort of deep, passionate, it can't be what I want it to be without this thing. And we've previously associated that with like accuracy and beauty of tone, and I think those things are really important. And then the question is can you actually feel like the art is suffering for these things? And I think in answering that question, how, then you start to find new pathways. So that's, sort of the top line thought for me.
Totally, absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing that. And unfortunately, we are just about out of time, but I always like to ask from all my guests, this work that you do and have been doing, there's got to be some tough days and days where it is definitely, not necessarily the best scenario. And where as a leader, you're feeling challenged or you feel something may not be surmountable. As a leader, I'm curious, because so many in our audience face these days, where do you turn for strength, for guidance, for insights? What tools do you utilize as a resource in your leadership roles?
Yeah, well, let me just say first off that leading through other people, right, is in a sense, new work for me, right? That I'll be doing it in to a greater degree than I have before. So, let me just own my own ignorance as it relates to leading people. I will say that for me, there are days where it just sucks. That's just, I mean, I think as an instrumentalist, I think I just draw on my sort of art background in this, and it's like, it's not always easy, and sometimes it's terrible. And that's just how it is. And totally. I think having that knowledge of like, it's been like this before and it felt hopeless, but I know that even though I couldn't see the end of the tunnel, if I just keep moving forward, there will be a sort of a speck of light that appears. And then, so there's this, just because it's completely dark right now, doesn't mean it's going to be like that forever. And I've had that experience, and you just need to move forward. So there's that, I think. It's not necessarily popular. And I think self-care is important. And, setting yourself up to be able to meet days like that on an ongoing basis does require, routines and taking care of yourself. And I know for me, my life got so much better when I, met my wife and built a family and, had that real sense of home to come home to. So I would say all of those things, take care of yourself. And also sometimes it's just like that.
I hear you. And of course, that aspect of family and extending from that community, so important. And of course, just such a core part of all of the work you've been doing and of course will be doing in this phenomenal new role. Alex Laing, you truly are one of the arts engines who is powering human creativity in our world. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Aaron.
Thank you.